It's 3 now.
Hello, everybody. Wow, right on the dot, 3 o'clock. Welcome to... It's usually a delay. Oh, yeah, there's usually a bit of a delay. All right. So welcome, everybody. If you're joining, if you're watching, we're just getting started here. We're making sure we have our streaming signal going strong and everything's working out. I'm getting the thumbs up. And so I'll just introduce everyone very quickly. Thank you. Our Frontline Arts virtual artist talk. This is our first since we've had virtual exhibitions since the shutdown started. And I'm Rachel Heberling, the Executive Director at Frontline Arts. And I have with me 3 artists who have the exhibitions here. We have Chee Bravo. I'll ask you each to raise your hand. Your squares may look different. So we have Chee Bravo. We have Onnie Strother. Hi, Onnie. And we have Len Merlo. Hey, Len. And then we have Lindsay Knipe, who is our exhibitions administrative assistant. She is doing all our tech today. And she's also going to be monitoring the chat. So any of you who are commenting now, and if you didn't get to ask questions ahead, we'll do group questions at the end. So Lindsay will be managing, responding, and reading your chat questions. Okay, so I just introduced everybody, and thank you again for joining us on this Sunday afternoon. I do want to also acknowledge it is the evening of Yom Kippur, so thank you for joining if you can. If anybody is not able to, this will be recorded. You can watch it later, and it'll permanently be on our YouTube channel. It's kind of funny to announce that, though, right? It sounds like I'm talking to the future. Hello, future viewers watching this later. Can you time travel? Can you back to planet Earth and help us out, please?
Back to 1978.
Anyway, so yes, you'll be able to access this recording at any time. Even those who are live, if you need to step out. So I'm just going to get started. And what's really great is everyone here with us today is a member and a longtime artist. They have come to know, I think all of you have come to know us back as our former name, the Printmaking Center and the Printmaking Council of New Jersey, correct? Yeah. Len and Onnie since like the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chee, you've been with us since what, like 2010, 2011?
No, just 6 years.
Oh, darn. Oh, wait, that's as much time as I've been there.
Yeah, I was there just before you. No, I was there with Linda.
Yes, I was
right.
there.
So around 2013, 2014, that's when I joined. That's when, after moving up, you know. So.
Yes.
Otherwise, if I had found you guys earlier, I would have definitely joined, you know.
Oh, well, I'm not trying to say that. Len and Onnie putting you to shame.
If you saw that still screening room before you joined, maybe you would have thought.
I know, it was horrible. It was.
Right, Rachel?
We'll talk about that at the end. I didn't even see all that. We have to get Dave DeMarchi and Jace Clark on here to talk about the before times with screen printing. So anyway, okay. So quick introductions finished here. I'm going to start with each artist. So we have specific questions for every artist that we're going to go through, and we'll show a slideshow so you can see their work while we're talking to them. And I am going to start with Chee. Lucky Chee. is our number one right now.
Yes, so
Start sharing a window so we can see your slideshow. And she is going to let me know how to proceed. Okay.
okay.
So Chee, our first question for you today is, how did you begin documenting street performers, and how did your trip to Cuba influence that work?
Okay, first of all, that's like a beginning question and an ending question together.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to actually kind of just start a little bit about me and then start with how I started with the street performers. So basically, I'm a printmaker and also a multimedia artist. And after graduating with an associate's degree in graphic design and a BFA in lithography in Miami, Florida, I started my career as a graphic designer. And after a long design career, I returned to art making after moving to Pennsylvania in 2016. So today I'll be talking about how I rediscovered printmaking through silk screening. My design background and skills using the digital software like Photoshop have been the tools which have enabled me to create my style, where I transfer an image from a digital form to a traditional manual form, silk screening. So it seems as though I'm reverting back to a traditional way of creating images on paper by using an advanced technology, right, which is the computer and the softwares. So this all started in the New York subway. When I turned 26, which is many moons ago, on May 26th, I treated myself to a trip to New York. This was my first time visiting New York. And I went down into the subway, and that made a huge impression on me. Never having been in a subway before, I was totally bowled over by the hyperactivity, the noise from the trains, the crowds, the dilapidated surroundings, and the smells. And then more recently now, in 2011, I moved up to Pennsylvania with my family. And I was excited to be just a train ride away from the city. While I would go into the city, I would sketch on the train. So I filled like 3 books of sketches of people on the trains between 2012 and 2014. And these sketchbooks at the Brooklyn Art Library in Brooklyn. In 2013, I made my first screen print I called Grand Central. And this I used a technique with stencils. It was called Easy Screen. And having no access to a print shop or not knowing my way around, I did this at my house. And this was very limited. And I, being clueless, not having taken a silk screen class, I had no clue what I was doing, right? But somehow I was trying to get image on paper through a printmaking technique. So I looked around for classes, and in 2014, I took my first silk screen class at Frontline Arts, which was formerly called Printmaking Center or Printmaking Council of New Jersey, which is Jace Clark. And since then, I haven't stopped. So that's how I started my silk screening. And the subway performance started after many trips to the city, riding the subway for hours or just passing through. I would opt to take the train, since I'd always find stuff to photograph and bring back to my studio to create my digital collages. So the subway performance started showing up in my imagery at that point. Subway Performer 1 was my first piece in the series. And you can start the slide now. So the next slide would show my very first silk screen using the Easy Screen stencil. And this is
Grand Central 3?
Yeah, Grand Central 3. So this is made up in 3 parts. It's like a triptych. And this is just 4 colors. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 colors. But I had to, since the Easy Screen wasn't this large, I had to cut pieces and, transfer them in stages. So this was kind of cool, and I wanted to do more and I wanted to go bigger. So with the silk screen class that I took at Frontline Arts, and having larger screens to work with and some knowledge of how the process worked, I was able to create other pieces. So the first piece I did at Frontline Arts, next slide, is called Subway Performer 1. And this was an interesting piece because it was made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 images in here. And I remember when I wanted to do something interesting to the dresses, so I asked Rachel at the time, how do I get those little dots on the dress to pop, right? So she said, well,
I remember this.
right? So,
Yeah.
so I got, what do you call that?
We tried letterpress, right? We wanted to do like a little deboss work.
With
Yeah.
the embossing. So you can't really see it, appreciate it here, but I got a couple pieces out, I got a couple good registered pop dresses from this piece. But anyway, so that was my first piece at the Frontline Arts, and this has grown to include obviously subway performers in the New York subway, and this led to finding subways when I travel. So the next slide shows a subway performer I found in Paris, down in the subway. So I took my photographs, bring it back, and created this piece. Then after that, the next year we went to Barcelona, and I found this other piece, next slide, which I called Barcelona. And this was actually my most ambitious piece to date. This one was, right, it's made up of 14 screens, 12 photographs, and 1 graphic design image, right? So, and it was also purchased by the Trenton City Museum last year. So I'm pretty happy about that. So anyway, so going on, 2 years ago, we went to Cuba, Havana, Cuba, and there's no subways in Havana. So, but there's a lot of performers, a lot of street performers. So this is an answer to the last part of the question, which is, how did your trip to Cuba influence my work? So my thing was, it seems as though I'm doing portraits. So I'll call it like a portrait series, okay? Because subways only apply to cities that have, the subway performers only apply to cities that have subways. But I was so enthralled with Havana and its colorful history and the the vibrant musical culture, and the whole place, was alive with music and people, getting by, performing in the streets and things like that. And what really surprised me too was the religion called Santeria, which is back in the islands. It's an underground religion. Is on par with Obeah and such religions which have an African base. But there in Cuba, it was out in the open, So I was like totally shocked, coming from an island where this type of culture is hidden and underground, to see it out in the open really surprised me. So my next slide, I did a little combination of the street performers, who were in almost every cafe or restaurant. There was performers on the streets. There were performers any time of the day, any time of the night. You can go to a restaurant or a club and find performers in Havana. So this is a combination of 2 sets of performers that I found. And on her dress, I decided to create that Santeria situation down there, which is she wore something pretty boring, which was like a pants and a blouse, a flower blouse. But I wanted to, the Santeria impression was so strong in my brain that I had to put it somewhere. And being in the forefront of the of this mixed media piece, I created the Santeria markings against her white dress, and that was a pretty interesting process because I normally work in acrylic for my paintings and mixed media, but this time I decided to use oil-based paint as the white, and behind the white is oil pastels, which is I scratched off to create all the designs on her dress. So if you don't know anything about Santeria, you probably would know the meanings of all these markings. And I'm hoping it's nothing bad, I went and researched it, and I tried to choose the good imagery, so it'd be good juju, right? If you, as the person using it and as a viewer, so you won't get any kind of bad vibes from it. It's still kind of like hocus pocus, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
did you take these markings directly from something that you were looking at? Are these your own interpretations, or I'm just
no, these are real markings.
Yeah.
These are real markings, and the mermaid is the center of their gods. It's a water based icon, and she's very prevalent in their religion. But I think it worked. I love it. It amazes me. Thank you. So it was a great end to the way this piece turned out. And from there now, we'll go to the next one, which I believe is my last piece to date. And this one I created just when the print shop reopened in August, because I had already gotten my screens from Brooklyn, and I was waiting to get into Frontline to create this piece. So this is the very first piece I created during this COVID period, and it's actually going into a show now in New Hope, the 91st Philip Small Art Exhibition.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited, and this one actually I hand colored. This is the first time I've ever hand colored a screen print, but it turned out fine. It turned out great. So, okay, so with that, let's see. I can start talking about my influence.
Yeah, that was going to be, so we're kind of like jumping back and forth. I'm going to go back and share a different screen then.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. It's
back
funny, we can't see anybody anymore. So yeah, my next question, we'll jump back and forth, and I think we have about 5 minutes. We're trying to do 15 minutes each. We were very curious about the influence of you. Sorry, this is going to show Onnie for a second. Okay, I'll switch back. But your influence growing up in Trinidad and Tobago, and how how does your work riff off of that? Maybe how did that give you an interest in street performers, and maybe the colorful nature of your work and the design elements? All right, here we go.
Yeah. So a little history about Trinidad and Tobago, right? Like Cuba, it has a very colorful history. We were once ruled by the French, then the Spanish, and then finally the English. So other nationalities were brought in as slaves and indentured laborers to work the sugarcane fields. And in this melting pot of people, with the Africans, the Indians, the Chinese, the Europeans, and all these people, the steel pan was created out of this situation, and was mainly by the African slaves. who came with their religion, with their ways, with their, and they tried to maintain it while still integrating it into the European culture, right? Like everywhere else. So this is where the steel pan came in, because back then they had no instruments to play with, right? So, and being having these oil drums around, they would take them and make music on them, right? And also because of, I know, have you ever heard of the carnival down in Trinidad? It's rival to Rio and New Orleans and these places. It happens around the same time. So it's huge. It's a huge thing in Trinidad. So I come from a very creative society. Let's put it like that. A society that creates and likes to party. Okay. So we have we invent our own rum, our own music, our own way of celebration, which is through carnival, right? And that was carnival entails creating costumes, to parade down the street, creating new music to dance to. And back in the day, back in the day when it first started, it was done by the slaves or the people who worked on the plantations. They were copying the French and their Mardi Gras, So the French had their costume ball, and the slaves had their carnival. So they would imitate their masters and dress up and act like them, and do in this kind of a charade. So that's how carnival came around, right? And everything moved along there. It came into the mainstream when things got, I guess, integrated. And just as we were going along, just doing the same thing over and over, right? 1976, a guy by the name of Peter Minshall came on the scene, and his design totally rocked the entire country, because it was so different. It was so creative. It was so different than what we were used to, right? And he used local material instead of imported stuff, like feathers and glitter and imported fabrics and stuff. He used paper mache. He used bamboo. He used stuff that you find in the country, right, to create his costumes for this carnival. So he was a game changer, basically. And coming from a background where he was in theater, his actual group of revelers would do a big performance on stage, dressed in these costumes that were handmade. I mean, all the costumes were handmade, but this one was particularly made with local materials, right? And he was a game changer. Everybody was in awe, or they either liked it or they didn't like it. They didn't think it was so progressive that it stuck in my mind as wow. Right? And then after that, a lot of people wanted to play in his, what do you call it, a mass band, a band where he would be, his designs you would have to wear, and you'd have to perform a certain way. In fact, his first his first costume was based on a theme called Paradise Lost. And in it, he had local folklore from Trinidad and Tobago, all the macabre stuff that parents would frighten kids with, right? But it was so beautiful, but macabre, really dark, but beautiful, and he brought that into the forefront. So it was like a street performance with masses of people. I mean, hundreds of people performing in different types of costumes. And in this particular one, I believe the first day, which was Tuesday, the performers came out all in white. The second day, they were like, came out with white with red. It seemed as though blood, the red represented blood. So there was like blood all over their costume. I mean, and like, it was weird. But thinking back, it's like, how cool was that? Right? So he actually made it a whole performance, theatrical event, and obviously he won, because it was so impactful, right? So, and this was, so he basically changed Carnival as we all knew it. And but back in Trinidad, living in such a colorful, creative atmosphere, it was like normal, and the preparation and festivities for Carnival started right after Christmas and ended on Ash Wednesday. So, I mean, it was okay to go out and, be creative, to do things, to partake in the carnival, to, have fun, so it was a whole industry. So it was a very creative industry. Even though I never really took part in it because I was so young. I have family that, in fact, my uncle is a photographer. He's retired now, but his cousin was the leader of one of these bands, and these bands had like hundreds of people in it. So they would design costumes for everyone, hundreds of people in sections, and each section was designed with a different costume, with a different leader, and then the entire band had a king and a queen, and they were like, they had the biggest costume, and then they would compete against each other, like the March Gras, which is the night before Carnival opens, and the festivities would go all through the night into the morning, with and then end up on the street, and then all the revelers would come out in their makeshift costume, whatever, or legal costumes, and have fun. So that's basically my relationship with creativity, and
Yeah,
thinking.
that's really cool. I like how it's interesting how you also found that in the New York. I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
Okay.
In the New York subway. That's really fascinating how that all came together, and then how you're interpreting that as visual art and combining with your design work.
Yeah, so it was like a natural, I guess, for me to move from as a designer in my design field into what I do now. Silk screening is so intertwined, right? Because that's how we used to get imagery and the news out there through the silk screening process, right? So it's a good marriage, So it seems to be a good direction for me as a designer, right? But then also, I mean, growing up in Trinidad too, with what I call this being exposed to this joie de vie, right? I now see it in my work. It's like the crux of my imagery. If you look at my imagery, the performers are having fun. They like seem to be interacting with the viewer, which I hope they are, because I normally try to choose the imagery or photos when I have a direct eye-to-eye contact with the person, and once I get that, I'm like, yes, I know exactly what's going to happen with that particular photograph. So it's like, and then down in the subway, I talk to the performers down there, try to get a sense of communication and about them, because they're down there and they seem invisible, even though they take up the entire space with their music and with their sound, right? They seem invisible, right? Nobody watches them. They just keep going, right? And it's kind of nice when you stop to talk to them, because you acknowledge that, hey, I like what you're doing, or you're pretty good, or whatever. you know, or even if you're not that good, you know, still you like a little bit of recognition, right? So it's like, yeah, after writing this, I realized, you know, yeah, I'm kind of like, I see that in my work, you know. So it's interesting and it's revealing. Let's put it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chee. I really, really appreciate your time and answering questions. I think we're going to get back to some of the technical questions again at the end, just so that we can we keep moving along, since it's somehow 3:30 already.
Yes. Sorry.
No, please. So yeah, no, thank you, Chee. I think I'm going to, yes. Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah and Hugo. Cool. All right, so I'm going to move to Onnie next. Hi, Onnie.
Hi, Rachel.
Just wanted to make sure I could hear you. So I'm going to show I'm going to start scrolling through your work on our website in a moment as you talk. But Onnie's been a longtime member of the Printmaking Center and Frontline Arts, and I've known Len and Onnie as well since the day I started. And we are very happy to have Onnie's work on our website as well with this incredible series. And he's been in most of our member shows, I believe. Right? You are.
Yep.
You're a regular.
Yes.
So one of my first questions for you, Onnie, was I heard you and Len talking about this too, right before we started. But and I guess Len, you were there too, so that's really cool. But how did your work at the Bob Blackburn printmaking workshop influence your art and the importance of passing along the democratic art of printmaking? If you had any words to say about that.
I met Bob Blackburn through a friend at the School of Visual Arts. I was a student at SVA. And after I graduated, I didn't have can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so after I graduated, I didn't have any place to work. And so I was a sculpture major, but didn't have any way to make sculpture. And so I felt like printmaking was something that could be manageable in a little bit of space that I had. And so I started taking classes, alumni classes at the School of Visual Arts, and I took various printmaking classes and ended up teaching a photo etching class in the alumni division. And I had a friend who was one of Bob's proteges, and so I met Bob through this friend and went down to a printmaking workshop and took some classes. And so when you go to a place that has the kind of tradition and level of professional quality that they had at the workshop, you are bound to pick up some of the some influences in terms of what it's like to work in a big shop and what it's like to work with people who have been within the tradition for many, many years. I also worked at Koppelman's, and Koppelman was a person who influenced Bob Blackburn and also Will Barnett, and so these these older guys kind of pass printmaking on hand to hand, and you learn the traditions of it through them. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of also, Bob Blackburn was one of the first well-known African-American artists that I had a chance to meet when I was in high school, and even in college, I didn't know of very many African-American artists. Even though there were some, we didn't learn very much about them.
Yeah, exactly. If anybody wants to hear as well, a side note, there's a wonderful interview with Justin Sands, who's now running the Bob Blackburn workshop on Pine Copper Lime, and he talks about the whole history of Bob Blackburn and how he established the studio and his love of just passing on the art of printmaking, and being one of the first major Black printmaking figures in the art world.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. So Onnie, I'm going to start showing your work so that it makes sense while you are talking about it. So hang on, you're going to see Chee for a minute again. And I just wanted to dive right in and just start asking you about this series. I mean, so what you have shared with us for the virtual exhibition is your Emmett Till and your Scottsboro Boys series, which, as you say, you began this work after the death of Trayvon Martin. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And clearly it's more relevant than ever right now, after years and years of sorry, it's hard to talk about it, systemic racism and police violence, and we just have name after name after name, continually not having justice in the system. So please, I want to hand the floor over to you and how your work talks about this, and how you see that printmaking is a wonderful way to document what's going on and show this to the public.
Well, this first one is called Cost. And when I started working in printmaking, the first thing that I learned how to do was photo etching. And I took photo etching classes at the School of Visual Arts. And guys, you all don't mind if I talk fast? I could talk fast or slow. But as a former history teacher, I can talk really fast. I think we're on a timeline. So if I'm talking too fast, let me know. Okay, so this first print is called Cost, and it's a photo etching. And it's a early print that I made. I continue to use all the different, I like to try to mix them up and use everything that I know how to do. And this was one that was, I thought fit well into this series because it has to do with the number of African-American youth that are killed, and homicide is one of the three greatest ways that African-American males lose their lives, and the cost to the world and the community of African-American males losing their lives is tremendous because we lose so much potential. And so that's what this is. It's a photo etching. This particular one is very big. It's like 18 by 24. And that's kind of it. I made it it was a photograph and then made into a solarized and then made into a photo etching. And obviously, you guys who know about printmaking, anything that's cut low is going to turn out to be white, and anything that's cut high will turn out to have color. And so it ended up looking a bit, and then in the parking lot where it was taken, it made a very nice kind of pattern in the background. And so that's kind of where I started with this. And the next one that I made is that I showed as two of these, and they're very different from each other, and that's why I included them together. I made several of these. This is a combined print, and it is a monoprint but all made on the press. Everything is made on the press. And so what I did was, at the time of when Trayvon was killed, there was obviously a big controversy about it. And many times when we hear these things about African-American males or anybody who's killed, I mean, Breonna, I mean, we can go on and on and on, but there's always a whole bunch of stories about that's swirling around it. And believe it or not, Emmett deserved to get killed in the parlance of the time. So he did enough to get himself killed. And so when we think about it, now and talk about it now, people actually don't believe it. They don't believe that someone could be lynched. A 13-year-old could be lynched and mutilated and thrown in a river. And they just don't believe it. They say, well, there's something there that we don't know about. There must be a part of that story that they're not telling us. Fake news, fake news. So what I did was to go back through old magazines and newspapers, lots of Ebony stories, Life magazine stories, and actually I made these, print them out of the printer, word for word, and then the background is made of transfers. So these are actual transfers made from the story. So if you want to read it, you could actually read the story for yourself. And on top of it is a painting. I made this at the New Jersey Center for the Arts in Summit. Then the next one is another iteration of this, because this print went into a bunch of different shows, and they didn't want the same. Different iterations were chosen, and so I printed over ones that were already made. And because it was a monoprint, I was able to just run it through the press and paint over it over and over again in different ways. So there are various iterations of the print that's sort of different. This one at the bottom has his two cousins who were in the room with him when he was taken out. So, and of course, obviously at the bottom, the picture of his mother, and then the body when it was brought back. And so people don't believe it, but you could read it for yourself. So that's the Emmett Till from the Emmett Till series. There's several of those. Yeah. And again, they're all made on the press, run through over and over and over again. And so you got different, different effects. Every time you make a monoprint, it's mono. It comes out different from the last one. And so this one's looks like a different print, but the same matrix underneath. They call Emmett Till Big Boy because he was 13, but big for his age.
Yeah.
So, it's rough, right? Yep.
Yeah, no, well, that's incredibly powerful. It's like you're using the newspaper, the news stories, you're collecting them and you are bringing them to life again. I mean, literally by putting your own rendition of Emmett onto them with the collection of stories behind, right? You're very powerfully saying, hey, this happened. This is real. Here it is. It's very relevant, all over again. Always.
This is from the Scottsboro Boys series. I made 13 prints. There were 9 Scottsboro Boys. Sorry, I'm talking fast, so I'm trying to run here.
You're good.
So Scottsboro Boys were 1937, right during the beginning of and it's all kind of tied together again, historically pieced together. And kind of try to put as much of the story into it as I could. The Scottsboro Boys, for those people who are not familiar, were 9 boys who were taken off a train accused of raping 2 white girls on the train, and for about 40 years they suffered unbelievable torture and miscarriage of justice. And the Scottsboro Boys were very important historically, as important within its way. And by the way, Rosa Parks said when she sat down on that bus, she thought, and they asked her to get up, she thought of Emmett Till and she didn't get up. You will remember that that Rosa Parks was involved in an organization that actually went down and investigated what happened with Emmett Till. And so she's very close to it. All of those people, they're all in the same area, all very close together. And so the civil rights movement, just like printmaking at Bob Blackburn's printmaking workshop, is passed down hand to hand. And so Parks knew was very intimately about what happened to Emmett Till. And so she thought about it before she decided that she would not get up. And so, and actually at the beginning of the 20th century, Scottsboro Boys is really the beginning of the civil rights movement in the 20th century. And there were many important cases that came about because of the Scottsboro boys. There were 9 boys taken off a train accused of raping these 2 girls. The girls were forced into the story, and then they had to stick to it. And there's just various parts of that story, and as you can see, it caught the imagination of the country. The NAACP did not want to pick it up because it was a rape case, and so the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, picked it up. And if you will remember, many of the NAACP was important, but not in the 1930s and 40s. In the 1930s and 40s, what was important was the Communist Party. Mm-hmm. And they gained their importance in the United States because of their champion and paying the lawyers for the defense of the Scottsboro boys. And so you can read sort of, if you looked into it, you could see it, and they organized protests, and you see 145,000 go to Washington to protest Scottsboro boys. And so different things, through there. So
wow.
Down at the bottom, Scottsboro boys and, different stuff. This is Scottsboro boys taken from the train. And it's again, a monoprint. And all of these are transfers and a painting at the top and then transfers at the bottom. And this is, again, I made a portrait of each one of the Scottsboro boys, and this is Scottsboro boys and with, what is his name? With Jim Crow. Jim Crow laws were the laws that were made that required African Americans and whites to have separate but very unequal accommodations. And so all of these kids were riding the train at the same time. They were all kids, along with hundreds of thousands of other young people of all races, riding the rails to try to find jobs during the Great Depression. The 2 girls at the bottom were dressed as boys on the train, and they just happened to be in the same car with the boys, with 5 of the Scottsboro boys. And when they were taken off the train, the sheriff said, much like your mom would say, what were you doing with those boys on the football team after hours? Mm-hmm. So they were forced into making a confession that the Scottsboro boys had raped them, and then they had to stick to it because it raised a lot of problems. This is Jim Crow walks the color line. It's the 2 girls at the bottom. They gave them some dresses to put on when they made the photograph.
Mm-hmm. And what are those figures in the background?
That's Jim Crow.
That is Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. Yes. Wow. And I know years later, as with Emmett Till, there were confessions that they had lied.
Yes. Well, the woman, the person who accused Emmett, confessed in 2012 that she had made the whole thing up.
Yeah, not that long ago.
Nope, not that long ago. Just before she died, she confessed. Yeah. Makes your hair stand up on your head if you haven't. Mm-hmm. So they went through quite a lot. So this is again, I made portraits of, this is called somebody's story. This is called Oline was a boy who was in a different car. He wasn't even in the same car with them. He was actually sleeping in a container car when they took them off, and he was blind. And he was riding this rails to try to find some glasses. And then when they took him off the train, they beat him and they broke his glasses. So he had to spend the time in the toughest prison in America. Without glasses. So this is Oline's story. So the text tells the story of Oline, and you can see down at the bottom is a tanker car. He wasn't even in the same car as them. He was in a different car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so this is Oline's story. So,
wow.
So, 2 of the Scottsboro boys were brothers. One of them was 13 years old. The older brother got the death penalty. The younger one got, I think, life in prison. And this was the first time the 12-year-old or who just turned 13, had left home. So he was with his brother, and again, they were put into the toughest prison in America. And what their defense attorneys said was that they were like little mice in a cage waiting to be lynched. And so, yeah. So, they made in the 1930s. It was the Am I talking fast enough? I'm trying to. In the 1930s.
And if you don't want me to go through all of these, you can just tell me to.
Okay.
To hold it.
Yeah, because we don't want to, I don't want to take anybody else's time. In the 1930s, all of these are put together because they were, they have a strong connection to culture, as well as they were a cause célèbre for the Communist Party and people around the world. And actually, James Cagney, paid for the Scottsboro Boys' defense. And so when you go on Wikipedia, there will be a link to James Cagney, and you say, wow, how did James Cagney get related to the Scottsboro Boys? Well, he paid for part of their defense. And so in this particular, so there are very strong cultural relationships between the things that happen within the society and popular culture. And so they actually made a film about Wild Boys of the Road and Wild Girls of the Road that really had to do with young people riding the rails. And this piece is called Angels with Dirty Faces, because these are the two girls who accused the boys of rape, which they probably didn't do because there was no physical evidence of them raping. And later on, one of the girls recanted her story and became actually a witness for the boys, but that didn't really help them very much. And so they were the Angels with Dirty Faces. And on this print, I included a big part of this had to this case had to do with miscegenation, with race mixing. That is the taboo of race mixing. And so you'll see some of those images in there, and there is one of over in the corner that I included, right over on the left, of a woman who was actually raped by 5 men, and threatened. She was actually coming home from church. They picked her up, they raped her, left her by the side of the road. She reported it to the police. They brought them in, they confessed to it, but they were never convicted of doing anything. And so I thought that it was a very interesting contrast, because this woman was actually raped, and again, after on her way home from church, she was raped, and they were confessed to having done the raping, but were never convicted, and threatened her husband that they wanted to pay her off so they could call her a prostitute. And it was actually a more recent story. I think that her story was done maybe in around 2015.
Okay.
So, wow. And that's kind of another Scottsboro Boys. I said I made portraits of all of them. I think probably you could read it because it's, a lot.
Yeah. I'll keep scrolling through. I know we have to wrap up so we can get to Len. But yeah, I'll just keep scrolling through a few more of these. And I think it's incredible the way that you combine photographic work. Chee does that as well, but you are also incorporating a lot of monotype and paint processes and many different types of photographic techniques. And it's very powerful, especially for this series. Please. So I think this is the last piece on the show. Yeah, I'll pause on that one. Aw.
I could talk all day.
No, this is great. I'm enjoying this. Onnie, did you want to say any? I'm sorry, I don't mean to rush you. We're going to wrap up all together at the end, but did you have anything to wrap up with this series?
Again, all of these have strong cultural resonance. This one that you have on now is Scottsboro Boys at the Apollo.
Yeah.
The Scottsboro Boys, it's made to look like a poster, like a poster for a concert. And the Scottsboro Boys actually went around to various theaters, and they had an act where they would and they would tell their story. And they told their story at the Apollo, and people would give money to help with the defense of the ones who were still in prison. And so, and so it resonated culturally throughout throughout the society. And at the bottom, there's beneath it says there's an advertisement that actually was taken from a 1930s movie, I Am a Fugitive from the Chain Gang, with Paul Muni. And I Am a Fugitive, the Chain Gang book that film was made from was actually about black men on the chain gang in Louisiana, but they would not star an African American. They starred a Jew who actually was made to look more like a white man, because actually Paul Muni was quite dark. And so, but they wouldn't have Paul Muni looking as though he was a black man. And so, but there was an important film that Paul was in that was called I Am a Fugitive from the Chain Gang, where he ran away from the chain gang, but it actually was about the African Americans' mistreatment on the chain gang. And so these things resonate throughout the culture. And so, and historically important. And I wanted to kind of, it took me a while to kind of work my way through this. So I'm not working on these kinds of things anymore, because art is a catharsis for us. And so it took me kind of a while. Maybe I worked on this for maybe like 5 or 6 years in different things. And so it took me a while to work my way through this. And so you use art for a whole bunch of different reasons. And so that's, I put this series together for that reason.
Wow. Well, thank you, Onnie. It's really an incredible series of work. Really appreciate you taking the time to share today.
Well, it's you giving me so much time.
Oh, please. I know. We're going to go past 4. Sorry if nobody, we're just having too much fun. Way too much fun here.
Sorry, man, I talked fast as I could.
That was perfect. All right, so we're gonna move to our third artist, Len, so that we can show his work a bit. And then, as said, we're gonna ask the questions asked from the audience. We'll ask at the end and have some group questions. So, hi, Len.
Hi, how you doing?
Thanks for being patient.
No, it was great seeing Onnie's work and Chee's work like that. I really, it's really enjoyable when you can hear the artists talk about a lot of this stuff, you know. I mean,
it really brings it to life. You know, it was great to have everybody's work on our website for the summer, you know, with descriptions, but it really brings everything to life to hear about your thoughts and backgrounds and how you came to it. Cool. So, Len, I'm going to bring up your web page, and we'll just kind of keep scrolling, and you can tell me if you want to point me to anything. But yeah, I know you and Onnie both have had a long career in public school teaching as well. I don't know. I don't think we mentioned that. And Len, you also work a lot with sculpture and ceramics, and you've done construction. So you are a multi-talented fella.
for me, a lot of it is process, and that's how I ended up getting to Blackburn around the same time that Onnie did, because
Yeah.
I had no place else to go. And when I was in school, in college, I got first introduced to printmaking, and part of that was the process. I was really involved quite a bit with all the processes, and I wanted to absorb everything I could. And at some point, I had no place else to work anymore. So my professor of lithography kind of pointed me to Blackburn. And at that time, the printmaking studio was right outside the Holland Tunnel. So if you were coming from New Jersey, you could just zoom right through the Holland Tunnel, and a couple of blocks from the tunnel was the printmaking studio. And I didn't get to know Bob Blackburn very well, but my professor was working there, and one of her colleagues was also working there, and I was introduced to Will Barnett at the time, who was doing a lot of series of his interiors there at that time. So I ended up working there for a couple of months. When I had no place else, I didn't have a press, and then finally I discovered the Print Council of New Jersey, and that's when I ended up first becoming a member. My children, at some point, my children grew up enough that they were in school, so I could start doing work again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I ended up going from Blackburn into the Printmaking Center of New Jersey.
Okay. Yeah, because you had a break, and then you found us.
Right.
Cool. And so I guess I'll start scrolling through your slideshow, and one of my first questions for you is, tell us about the memories and childhood influences on your work. You use a lot of semiotics and symbolism, and you seem to have your own kind of systems of codes and language in a lot of this work. And I just wondered what was influencing that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because that was always there. When I was a kid in elementary school, my school was right by the Elizabeth Port, and so we were able to take field trips with the ferry to Staten Island. And my art teacher was an artist from New York who came to New Jersey and taught art in the elementary school, and we would go to the Met at least twice a year as elementary students on field trips. So I got really impressed by the Egyptian, exhibits in the Met, and hieroglyphics and cuneiform writing. And I always was drawn to that sort of working in registers and, the sort of like the hieroglyphic imagery and the mark making especially of cuneiform writing. So a lot of that comes from there. But then, as I learned more, I started seeing these very similar things in all cultures. Mm-hmm. And that idea of mark making became a big part of my work. And it still is. I mean, sometimes I try to push myself away from it, but it ends up coming back in. And I sort of incorporate a lot of that with environmental or social justice issues. I mean, it's been a while since I really worked through any of those, but a lot of the stuff that I do is environmentally based. This piece right here is interesting. Go back to that last one, Rachel.
Yes, I have this piece, everybody. I have to brag.
This is sort of like an homage to Frontline Paper, because Rachel told me about this cool museum in Easton where she made this yellow paper, and I just grabbed that paper and sort of made this sort of homage to actually paper making, based on just that experience that she told me about. And if you look close, you'll see right in here is Frontline Paper. This is acrylic with collage. And a lot of times, even in the paintings, I end up collaging print. So these are two pieces of the face, and that sort of glyph underneath it are pieces of prints that I just cut up and used as collage elements in a lot of other work. Even in monotypes, I still go back and use them again. Mm-hmm. But this piece right here is sort of an homage to Frontline Paper and my friends and colleagues there.
I think some of them might be watching.
I'm glad they are. Thank you.
And yeah, I always wondered too, Len, if you have any like secret messages and codes in your work.
Well, there's certain things in there that that have meaning. Like if you go back to some of those paintings where there's sort of glyphs in them, go back, go back. Like some of these things right here, these little crow feet are bird markings. Right in here is that upper piece of frontline paper with the lines on it is sort of sand and bird markings. And those pieces in the middle, they have sort of have a meaning of like birds walking along the shore. So this piece is more an environmentally based piece. And the collage elements are, it's a lot of times it's a monotype, but a lot of times it's composition. The composition is I try to simplify and then sort of elaborate with other stuff in the monotypes. But yeah, there are. So then, if you look close, there's also some fish swimming along the bottom there.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. And I don't think it's in this slideshow, but I've always enjoyed the piece you did our presentation print a few days about kind of birds being a mirror as to how we're treating the environment, and we need to watch as a sign.
So if you go back one to that line of cut. This I was rolling along at Frontline Arts, really getting into a lot of new traditional non-toxic work and really sort of pushing my own envelope to bring things to myself and bring things to the studio that I thought we needed. I mean, when I was young, I really developed some bad allergies to solvents and things like that, and that sort of pushed me into looking for non-traditional ways of doing things, and especially non-toxic. So I started playing around with speedball, water-based inks way before Cuba and all that. And I was friendly with Eileen when she first came to printmaker, Eileen Fody, when she first came, and she sort of encouraged me to experiment with a lot of stuff that wasn't toxic at the time. And that was at the very beginning of people trying to avoid some of the toxicity that came along with printmaking. That was one of the reasons I sort of gravitated away from silk screening when I was in school, because the cleanup and the inks were so toxic. It was like terrible just to work with acetone and mineral spirits, and just to clean your screen, double brushing both sides of the screen to get them clean. So it was real revelation when I saw people at Frontline just working with acrylic-based inks. But this piece right here was the first piece that I did after the pandemic hit, the first print that I did, which I printed at home on my little Holbein press, of just me feeling sort of, the whole idea of being wrapped up in not be able to go anywhere and not be able to breathe or talk to anybody or see anybody. So, it's pretty obvious. Those images in behind me are basically the virus itself, sort of hovering. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're still in the same situation as when you made this plan. Gosh. I wondered if I could interject one of the registrant questions.
I'd rather not talk. I'd rather you ask me the questions. But
No, that's okay. Just because of something you just mentioned, and this is up for anybody to answer, but Barb Zychik had asked, if you're using etching inks, do you prefer the Charbonnel oil-based inks or the Calico inks, and have you used oil paints?
In paintings, I've used oil paint, not in any of my monotypes or anything like that. But I don't have any preference. I'll use graphic design, whatever, Charbonnel. It depends. I like to use the Charbonnel only for solar plate because it's water miscible, so you can wash it off easy without destroying the plate. But if you look at those two monotypes that are behind me in the background, those are just regular etching ink with collage mixed in. kind of using just traditional, monotyping process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we use a lot of both at the studio. We kind of equally use Charbonnel traditional and the aqua wash and the Caligo safe wash. I don't know. I just use whatever I feel like that day. I like all of them. It's been really awesome to. I mean, me personally, I feel like it wasn't until maybe 2012 that I was able to start working with some less toxic print materials that worked really well. I know some of them had a bad rap early on.
Well, it's really nice to have that option. It is great to have that option because I use a lot of the Caligo or the Charbonnel water miscible inks for the solar plates.
Yeah.
And then it's great. Or if you just want to run a quick proof of something, the quality is great as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And they're non-toxic.
Exactly.
People keep giving me ink, so I use whatever people give me.
That too. And then, maybe that can tie into these. I was also really curious, going back to, some early prominent Black printmakers. I know that you were one of the first, besides our veteran artist Eli, to talk about Doc's Thrash and his co-pioneering of the carborundum print process during the Works Progress Administration era, out of a studio in Philly. So I was curious about your influence from Doc's and how you've done some of these carborundum and sort of relief collograph prints.
The way I got really interested in carborundum printing, which is something that a lot of people didn't really know about as far as, being in the 30s and people using it. I saw an exhibit at the Zimmerli at Rutgers, especially when Judy Brodsky had the printmaking studio going at Douglas, and they were really doing a lot of print exhibits. There was a small carborundum print, which I didn't even know what it was, in an exhibit done by like a 30s Ashcan school artist. I don't remember the artist's name, but it was a really beautiful small print, and it was carborundum printing. So over the years, I kind of looked it up and, became interested, and I never really tried the traditional Doc Tracks method of using it. It's almost like a mezzotint process, but it's, it's a less expensive way, or for during that time, a way to do it without having other options. But I started using it. I took a class in Provincetown using carborundum printing to create images just by painting it with acrylics. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really got interested in it. I had done a bunch of series back around the year 2000 that I really got some nice prints out of. And the tonality and the gradations that you can get mixing it with just different varieties of grit and the amount that you put into the acrylic medium can give you some really great effects. Then I moved away from that for a while, and then when I came back to Frontline and started playing around with it as a way to add to some kind of tonality in some of these collographs, I started using it again. And, we set up, Rachel and I and some other people set up, all the little jars for sprinkling. We went through all the carborundum we have, because it was, printmakers know carborundum from being graining lithostones. That's my first, introduction to it. And they used to make it right by the Raritan River in Sayreville. There was a factory that made carborundum. So that's how I ended up doing, but I ended up combining, in this series that I did just before we closed for the COVID, I did a series of 4 and printed them on one sheet, and these are the individual prints. Mm-hmm. Just using collograph, carborundum, and pushing back into the collograph with scribers just to create that sort of dry point effect. Mm-hmm. So it's a series. These are a series that I've been working on for quite a few years since I've been working with carborundum again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can also get some really kind of photographic effects with it too, depending on how you work with it. I also learned the process from Evan Summer, who was my printmaking professor in college, but the same like loose, carborundum mixed with glue and medium technique, which can get pretty messy. But yeah, then recently Speedball came out with the Akua carborundum premix that we've been trying out with some techniques in the studio.
I've been using that too. Actually, on some of these, it's a combination of that and then more like heavier grit powder mixed in actually with it because it acts like a paste. So if you did it a little bit, you can paint it, or you can actually use a putty knife to actually just use it almost like a paste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess one of I see some of your paintings. Yeah, we have more paintings and collage work at the end here. Yeah, I wondered if there was anything else you wanted to talk about with influences of your work. And then I know just personally, we don't have examples here because maybe it's more your personal work, but I know that you yourself also find printmaking to be, a democratic medium of the people and the way to get out information and, get out the vote. And so I just wondered if you had any final words to say about printmaking and activism.
Well, I always, the reason I always gravitated towards printmaking and ceramics and some of the other things that I've spent a lot of time working is because of the community aspect of it. And ceramics is very similar to printmaking because you're always, generally you're working in a communal studio, so you're always bouncing back and forth ideas with different artists and different people that are working in the studio. And with printmaking, I go back to, the use of it in early times, even in, pre-Renaissance times with getting information out to the public. In early Renaissance, before the Renaissance, it was used to get religious information, images that were printed from the Bible and from religion out to the masses. So that's what they generally used, the prints for then. As artists, we don't really have much of a platform to be able to affect, social change or social justice, but we do have printmaking, and it's a way of communication that you can get ideas and images and things out to the public that some people can't really express. I mean, we don't really have much of a platform as citizens. So some of the things we can do is print imagery or print ideas or print things that we can either distribute or give away to the public to sort of try to create a better society, try to create a better world, try to deal with some of the problems that we all face. And that was, that's one of the reasons I sort of gravitate towards letterpress, which sort of, being at Frontline and seeing the capabilities that we have there sort of invigorated me to get involved in that because I had never done it before. I had never done any letterpress prior to coming to Frontline. So I sort of jump around back and forth with all kinds of things. That's, as you can see just from these images. I mean, some are related, some are, different times, but I'm kind of jumping around a lot.
Yeah, this one has letterpress.
Yes, okay. It's just it's a simple letterpress with, with an image, with a liner cut.
Okay, well, thank you, Len. I think that statement leads very well into one of our questions from the group, from one of our viewers. But before that, I just wanted to check in if you had any other final words you wanted to say for your part, Len, and Lindsay, if we had any group chat chime-ins.
The thing I just want to say, which I really want to express to everyone, including the three artists, the other two artists that we're working with, and the people that are viewing, is the fact that as an organization, the community aspect of Frontline is the thing I miss the most about not being able to go in. So, that said, I know Onnie's got a communal studio that he works up in Riker Hill when he's up there in his studio, but that's one of the main things that I miss about not being able to interact with the other people in our community.
Yeah, social distancing is pretty hard on printmakers.
Oh, yeah.
Makers. It's nice to see you guys and gals. Aw.
Could you just repeat the first part of that question? Yeah.
Aw.
Well, yeah, Rachel and I sort of bounced back off each other for a couple of years, just trying to push as much as we can towards moving to a non-toxic environment to get some of the things that, some of the effects that we were trying to get, or get things that we can teach people without poisoning them, in classes at Frontline.
Yeah.
And before this COVID hit, we were just, we were really starting to push the limits for etching and soft ground and all kinds of things that were just starting to bring great results. Yeah. I was really excited about it.
Lindsay's been a great help with that too.
Yes. And we were really sort of getting to the point where we were starting to talk to other shops about it and getting ideas. And, we had a lot of success going and a lot of ideas for classes that obviously we can't do now. Hopefully we'll be able to do them sometime in the future.
Yeah, we're doing what we can online, but it's not exactly the same. So we'll experiment solo. We are continuing to do so in any way that we can, but we have to hunker down for a little bit until we can gather. We have a small space, so that's an extra hurdle for us. I wanted to ask this question to the whole group. I thought this was a fantastic audience question from Tara Kraus. She said, how are you all called as artists to create? What energies are you working with? And what is your role as an artist at the moment? Open to the group. I know, that's a big one.
Well, my energy, I guess, to keep working is the fact that you just kind of show up whenever you can. I mean, your life has limitations as far as the time, but what I try to do is I try to touch base with ideas or something I'm working on at least every day. It could be for 10 minutes, could be for 20 minutes, it could be for 6 hours, depending on my schedule or what's going on. Since the COVID hit, I have more time in the studio, which time is that I used to give to Frontline, but now I'm sort of working here, so that a lot of that energy comes from a place that you really can't. You have to do it. You really have no other option, or else you just go off the deep end. That's how I feel, anyway. What was the second part of that question?
What's your role as an artist at the moment?
No, my role is to defeat Donald Trump and get him out of office. Get him as far away from anything that he can do as we can.
All right, Onnie?
Well, I'm not sure. I worked on the things that have a social kinds of messages. I can never seem to get away from being a teacher. You know, I teach handicapped people, and I teach seniors. I can never manage to get away from being a teacher, and so you always want to be disseminating information and trying to correct or trying to give another point of view on something that maybe would help people to make informed judgments. But the degree to which being an artist and working in making art statements, to me, is questionable. I think that direct kind of, you might be able to get more done by being in a demonstration, or you might be able to get a lot more done by running for office. And so my thoughts about how you can engage by being an artist changes from depending on how I feel at that day, or what particular issues need to be addressed.
Chee? Wait, is she muted? There we go.
Yeah. I think, what was the first question again? Something about the energy?
Yeah, how are you called to create, and what's your role as an artist right now?
Okay, I think artists are special people. They're like a window to the innermost part of a human being. And actually, I think as an artist, it's kind of scary when you actually reach down and find stuff. And then as an artist, if you're brave enough to put it out there, because it's very revealing. It's that part of your person that you're not quite sure if you're ready to show it, or or have people criticize it, or have people get to know that part of you. So I think it's being an artist and doing certain types of work like Onnie and Len, being activists and stuff like that. I think it's a very brave thing, and I commend them and similar artists who do that type of work, because it's bringing awareness to the community of the underlying things that are there, but a lot of people want to pretend it's not there, So it's very opening yourself and to the public, and they can be pretty nasty, right? So I think it's a brave thing for artists who go into their being and pull things like that out. But obviously, a lot of people who are not in the arts or creative field, I think they may tend to block or hide things, their true feelings or their way they feel, maybe what's politically correct or what's what society would accept. They rather not go there. But as artists, we go there, and occasionally, this part of my art is the happy part, right? But I also do installations, and I create deities, which are bricolage, and they talk about the wants and desires of society by creating these false gods, what they worship, who they worship, materialism and symbolism and all these things that really, if you really look at it, it's just a front, or it's not real, doesn't really, it says a lot about a person, right? But it really doesn't really matter in the whole scheme of things in humanity. Basically, it doesn't add anything positive or towards the human race. So
Mhm.
so it's I think the energies as an artist, like Len says, and Onnie knows, you have to do it, and you guys do. You have to do it, otherwise you're gonna just get, I would say you would just not be able to function. You know, if something you feel some so strong about something, you have to let it out. You have to do it, and art helps you. Is that vehicle which we use as artists? So I think, and if you're really true to yourself and your feelings, you have something to say. Everybody has something to say, even if you don't think you're an artist, but you have something to say, and you can say it in different ways. You can do it through visual art, you can do it through music, can do it through all these different media. So as an artist, in the morning you get up and there's always stuff that you need to say or do or whatever, or work on. So that's where I get my energy from, and that's where I think a lot of other artists get their energy from.
Yeah. You're compelled.
Exactly.
You can't not.
Right, you just can't not do art.
Well, sometimes, this is TMI. Sometimes I call it feeling like art's debated. Like, right? Like, if you go for too long without making any art, you're just like, oh man, you get cranky.
Yeah, you do.
That's
You
great.
get frustrated. You get irritable. Because you have so much to say. You have something that you think is important that needs to be shown. I mean, even if you don't show it to anybody, but you just put it down, you put it out there, and you hold it till you're ready to show, because, you have to be ready for, I think, the criticism and the opinions that, the public have about, well, what they think you're about, right? But once you realize that, what, I don't care what you think. This is the way I feel about it, or this is what I think I need to tell the world, where I'm coming from, then you know what, you're okay. You're okay. But it's hard to get to that place sometimes, And I don't know, as an older person too, it's like, you know what? It's easier. It gets easier. I think as you get older, So that's my 2 cents, I think.
Thank you. Onnie?
Yeah, as you looked at some of the images that came out of the Scottsboro series or the Emmett Till, I've shown these things around, and there's been times when some of the prints have made people cry. It sort of brought a tear to people's eye, and I feel like Matisse, I want to make people happy.
Well,
Right then, I want to make people pictures where people could look at them and tired businessmen could be happy.
well, all of you have very varying series, right? We have celebratory work, we have beautiful work, abstract work, and very difficult work. We're human beings with lots of emotions and a lot to say, right? But you can't be happy all the time, dang it.
Yeah, you should.
I mean, it's good to try, but sometimes it's really hard.
Yeah. So,
Lindsay, did we have any other pre-registrant questions? Or okay. Well, I know we were supposed to end at 4, so I don't want to drag this out too horribly long. If anyone feels like there was something they didn't get to say, please say some final words. I wish we could talk for another hour. There were many more questions I wanted to ask and things I wanted to discuss. Chee, yes.
I just wanted to talk about that thing, about that question where you want to know if I'm going to work any larger.
Yes.
And you know about that, right? Because I attempted to work larger, this large, and it just didn't happen because obviously I don't have access to a big enough press to do something this large. So what I had to do is actually split it in half and do a left and a right. So what would have taken 6 screens is now 12 screens. And it didn't quite, work out the way it's supposed to be. So I basically stopped it on the last screen, which was my final black. And I ended up with something this small. So I went from this to something like that. So hopefully, these are really enjoyable to do because they're fast to make. I can make it faster and it's less expensive. But something like this, I'm probably going to try and attempt it in the future. Something this big. Or maybe I'm going to collage this one, get out of the silk screening process, just doing silk screening alone and do some collaging on it. But it's on the back of my mind. It's in the back burner. So eventually one day I'm going to wake up in the morning and say, I got it. I'm going to work on this one. It may be a few years, it may be a few months, but hopefully I know it's going to come one day. So, that's...
Chee, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you, when you say you need a press, do you mean like a screen printing press or the screen itself?
The screen and the screen printing press. Yes.
I may have some giant screen frames. They're wood, but you can have them if you want them. I gotta just check. I mean, really big.
Yeah. Do you have a press too?
No, I don't know.
We have a couple huge frames in a closet that are too big for any of the equipment at Frontline. She has been using it's called like a one-arm press, AccuGlide, and she is one of our key holder members that has really been taking advantage of that awesome little machine. But she has now maxed it out, and as if any printmakers are watching, that, well, the bigger you go with printmaking, the more complicated it is, especially with registration, because, it's hard to handle paper that's huge. And then, you have humidity, and like the bigger the paper is, the more it stretches and expands between colors. It could be 1/8 of an inch or more. And now all your screens you burned don't line up. I mean, it's a bear. So I commend any of you attempting massive scale print with registration. You figured it out. Yeah, you just activate it. If you have a humid day, you can't get the same registration on the dry day.
Yeah.
The next
you
day.
find out the hard way,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We all found out the hard way, right? All right. Aw. Thanks, lovely Tara.
Thank you for inviting us to show our work.
Yes, please.
In council, I was very honored to be able to be included at the council. It's like I said, Lynn and I started a long time ago. I started at when you could be a key holder, and a key holder meant you could go anytime you could use your key, which meant when I was getting my master's in at Montclair, I could go at 12 o'clock and work until 3 o'clock because you had a key.
She does that.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
All weekend. I'm like, it's awesome.
I hate the Printmaking Council and Frontline, and want to thank you for showing my work.
Aw.
Oh, and thank you, Frontline, for my first solo show, even though it was virtual. Thank you so much.
Aw, of course. And, yeah, I wish it was in person. All of this was planned to be in person, just so everybody knows. So.
Just that I didn't have to carry all that stuff to the gallery. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. But yeah, we do. So just to wrap this up, we do still we have people renting the studio on Tuesdays. We still have key holders. People are coming in to use the studio, but we just, staffing is down. So we're not there almost every day of the week like we used to be. But we're still doing everything that we can to continue services, even in these difficult times, as we're having some difficult times as well. So I just wanted to send a sincere, heartfelt thank you to everyone who's been watching and everyone who has donated. It's absolutely incredible. You're helping to get us through as much as possible. I know everyone's having a tough time. So it means a lot. So thank you. Thank you for watching. Thanks for supporting. Thank all of you wonderful artists for your incredible work and spending a Sunday talking about it with us. It means a lot too. And we hope for more. And thank you, Lindsay, for your awesome tech support and organization, putting this all together. All right.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody.